So, as you can see, this is going to be a very high production quality video. I'm just going to start off by playing a video of the level and action, so I'll have something to refer back to later, and talk a little bit about just sort of just the history of this. So I think one of the questions that people ask me is this the first time someone's done this, the first time someone's made a machine in Mario Maker that can do this? And the answer is probably. I couldn't find anything on English language Google about someone doing this before. I found lots of people adding machines, but no one else making one that could multiply. So I believe this is the first. It's possible it never made it to English language because it was posted on some Japanese site and no one ever translated it. It's possible that somebody's done it and never posted anything about it, but outside of that, I'm reasonably certain that this is in fact the first one, with one exception being that I know for certain this isn't the first one because I made one in Mario Maker 1. I never posted anything about it online, which is mostly because it was bad, and it didn't work very well. I'll stick the level code in the description if anyone really wants to go back and play it. My advice to anyone who decides to do that is that if there's a part where you're randomly getting crushed, then you need to hold right. And if that doesn't really tell you everything that you could need to know about the level, then go try it for yourself. It's not good. It only goes up to like 4 times 9 also because, I don't know, it might have been possible to build a 9x9 one in Mario Maker 1, but I doubt it. It certainly would have been easy. So I guess one thing I should say just before talking about what this is, as we're watching the end of this, is what this isn't. So if you look at the Cluttered Chaos Calculator, which is the main impressive other calculator, I mean, people have built other things, but that's definitely the most significant one. What that is it's a bunch of binary full adders and, some other circuitry to convert that into the display. But basically, if you were to try and build a machine of that type, actual logic gates and such, to multiply, you couldn't do it. There's no way you could fit in a level. So that's not what this is. Now that the media player is messing up and my screen's going picture in picture, let's talk about what it is. So, I have here, and I'm just going to play through this once. It's a few seconds long, just in case anyone wants to look at the whole map. I'll probably play this back slower or pause it or something. This is just what I'm going to be referencing for the rest of the video. And I actually meant to have both videos up and running at once here. So let me just hopefully none of those are anything embarrassing. I don't know what they are. Yeah, as you can tell, this is very high production quality, but I'm hoping to get some good explanation. So let's start with the oh, what? Why you just went away? Yeah, high production quality right here. So let's start with the first bit, the data entry, the inputting of numbers. So I'm gonna pause it right there. As you can see in the video, broke these 2 brick blocks, one that's 6 across, one that's 7 across. And if you look in the actual video, you'll see that each brick block has a blaster behind it, so whichever ones are broken will have blaster spawn in after the room is reloaded. And also I put 1 coin here and 9 coins here, which was supposed to be like a reference for what the number inputs there are. I don't think anybody's actually figured out what they mean, so I don't think it worked. But anyways, the other thing to know about this room is that this is a question block with a vine in it. So not instantly when the room spawns, because that would cause problems that I'll get to in a minute, but momentarily after the room spawns in, this question block flies over, blows up the bomb, and hits the switch. And this will also happen when you go through that door. So there are also these spike balls, which don't spawn the first time because of the switch. The one other thing to know about spike balls, which will be important for the rest of the video, is that spike balls always spawn in rolling towards the player, except if you spawn them out of question blocks or note blocks. Spike balls usually spawn in facing the player. Probably also if you shoot them out of cannon too. Spike balls usually spawn in facing the player. That's enough information. Also, these bombs won't spawn in the first time because they're spawn blocked. And also, this is a screen scroll stop. So let's carry on the video a little bit. So you see a lot of things just happen. So I'm going to break that down. First of all, those bombs spawn, but then this contraption triggers the on-off device again, which, for one thing, sets these blocks back to red so that the spike balls can roll over them. The reason it has to wait a moment is because if it didn't, it would just destroy the spike balls that were spawn blocked by him, which would not be very good. So the one thing to notice is that this blaster here is blocking some of the spike balls. Specifically, we entered 7 in the top row, so you'll notice that there are 9 minus 7 equals 2 spike balls left. And I'll get into how that's used in a moment. Actually, I think that's all that's important here. So also the screen scroll stops. The reason I had the screen scroll was so that I was afraid of spike balls unloading. Later when making the level, I realized that spike balls stay loaded, I believe, 10 blocks off screen, just like shells, so there wasn't actually anything to be worried about. But it's not costing me any extra entity limits to keep it that way, so there's no reason to change it. So anyways, player goes here, and the one thing that you will hopefully have just noticed is that those spike balls run into these bricks. One thing which you unfortunately can't see is that because you entered 6 in the bottom column, there will also have been 3 spike balls here that survived. They will go up here, and they will go over and hit these first 3 bricks. So if you think about, and the donuts are just there to make sure that all the bricks hit them. It seems like an excessively long wait, but it's actually not. If there were any less bricks, then sometimes not all the spike balls would go through. So here's where we are on the level. Mario is now here, and a number of brick blocks are broken in this row equal to 9 minus the second number, and in this row equal to 9 minus the first number. Now, I'm going to try and abstract this a little, and same with the rest of the explanation, and then I'll go into much more detail later. But essentially, first of all, you can think of there being an extra brick block here, an extra brick block here, and an extra frozen coin there. Those aren't placed in the level because there's no way those can actually be destroyed. But if you think of those being there, then the number of brick blocks that will be left in this row is exactly the second number, because there will be 9 total, including the one pretend brick block that's not really there. And you've just destroyed 9 minus however many there were, so the number of remaining brick blocks will be the second number entered. Similarly, the number of remaining brick blocks here, including a virtual one here that we're just going to pretend exists, is going to be the first number entered. All of these cannons shoot out potaboos, and the only purpose of this complicated setup, actually I'll get that in there. Basically, it's to make sure all the cannons fire and nothing goes horribly wrong. So you can sort of view that as this getting projected. It's like these slopes are mirrors, and you're shining light through these. So you can't actually see much of it in the video. But so if these 7 blocks remain, then these 2 blocks that were destroyed will have the light shine through them, and these ice blocks will be destroyed. Similarly, these 3 blocks that will be destroyed will go up here, reflect up here, and destroy these 3 rows of coins, leaving, importantly, this is the one important thing about how this machine works. It will leave a 6x7 rectangle of ice blocks, including the one pretend block, that have not been destroyed. Because, of course, each of these 7 blocks will protect the row above it, again, ignoring the fact that there's not actually a block here. And each of these 6 blocks, again, ignoring the one that's not actually, counting the one that's not actually here, will protect one row. Sorry, I said row here, I meant column. And the spike top, or the spike tops, I don't know what things are called. The spike top is just there to ensure that Mario waits long enough on this section for all the lava bubbles to destroy what they may. And you'll see here that 3 of them went up there to ensure that Mario stays in the area long enough for all the spike tops to destroy what they have to. So, as you can see right here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks wide and 6 blocks tall. So you'll notice that every single ice frozen coin has a flower that's spawn blocked by it. And there's also exactly 19 up here. And there are 81, again, ignoring the fact that one's not actually there. There are effectively 81 fire flowers that are spawn blocked. So, moving into here, you'll notice that 6 times 7 equals 42, or really 41 because there's one missing, but pretend there's one there. 42 fire flowers are now spawned in. No, are now not spawned in, which means that of the 81 plus 19 equals 100, 100 minus 42, which is, I think, 58 are spawned in. So, at this point in the level, that's where the multiplication is done. The number of open slots in the... I guess I should actually mention entity limits. There can only be 100 power-ups that are loaded in at a time. So, the remaining slots in the power-up limit, which would be 42 in this case, are exactly equal to the number you're trying to calculate. That's it. This slightly more than 2 screens are all that's required to multiply 2 numbers. This all is what's required to get it to display as numbers. So I'm going to let a little more of the video play and explain what's going on. So the next machine that's going to be loaded is this. And all of these note blocks have fire flowers. I'm going to stop the video here again and say that if you care to count, there are actually 42 fire flowers, and you'll notice that little puff, you'll see more of them. That means that there's a fire flower in that block that's not spawning. In this case, it's because the limit is full. So, exactly 42 flowers are spawned in. Ignore the blue on-off blocks for now. I'll get to them in a moment. But the point of these empty P blocks, also, one thing that's worth noting here is that there will always be at least one flower, so this will always be occupied. That's a little important. Is that these P blocks, well, the first one's at 1, but the other ones are all at increments of 10. So, if we look, this flower, this flower, this flower, this flower, and this flower are spawned on top of P blocks. That's exactly 5, which is 1 more than the tens digit of the number we're trying to calculate. The one other thing that I guess is worth mentioning here is that these setups with like stacked note blocks and power-ups don't work in Mario Maker 1. The items will just fly off to the side. But anyways, so, right. So there's a lot going on here in that like second and a half, not even a second and a half, in that instant. So the instant you press the P switch, all of these power-ups are destroyed. So note that after the Goomba runs over this, the power-up limit will be filled again, but when the P switch is pressed, number of open slots in the power-up limit will be one more than the tens digit of the answer. Now, there's also a P block that you can't really see behind that bomb. A brick block and a hard block and a POW. So that will destroy the POW. The one thing that you may not know is that the way POW block destroy coins, they're destroyed in a wave emanating out from the POW block. So these bricks will all be destroyed to coins, and then those that are closer to the POW block will fall first, so I can ensure that these note blocks will be activated in ascending order. And these all contain mushrooms. So moving back to the video again, we'll see that, well, actually, let me step that back a few frames. Okay, so you can see between those two frames that one spawns and goes down there, and then 4 more spawn. So that's exactly 5, which is, again, one more than the 10th digit of the number we're trying to calculate. Also, these have munchers in them, so you'll notice if we let it progress a few frames further that each of the mushrooms blocks the one under it. So only the sort of highest mushroom to spawn is able to proceed. One other thing to say about this, these only go up to 8, just because the 10th digit can never be 9, which is actually important and convenient. So, anyways, we proceed along here. The mushroom moves into here. And at this point, only one mushroom will have survived. So, if you look, this is where the encoding for the different numbers are. So, for instance, this is the number 4 because this is the 4th mushroom to spawn. Also, 8 doesn't actually have a row, it goes up there. So these are rows for 1 through 7. And they denote what segments should be destroyed. So this whole column of note blocks, if any lava bubble is spawned in here, it denotes that that this segment should be destroyed. And that's done with the frozen coins. Again, I think the frozen coins are what make a lot of this possible, because getting from a number to a segment is actually kind of hard, and that's why most of this is set up to do it. This segment, this column corresponds to, I believe, I don't know, the top segment. There's a little bit of a pattern to it, but there's not really. It's mostly just arbitrary. And you'll notice that those poop out lava bubbles, which will destroy these frozen coins and make sure that the next time this area is loaded, spike balls will spawn there. The one other thing to note is that if specifically 0 is entered, then 0 will be off the screen most of the time, but it will pop back up here into the 1 row to destroy this block, which corresponds to the center, the only one that should be destroyed for 0. I had something I was going to say about that. Yeah, the major sort of constraint on this is that because I'm using note blocks, which I kind of have to, because power-ups can't hit question blocks, because I'm using note blocks, they have to always be on the screen when they're activated, not just loaded, but on the screen vertically as well, and horizontally. So that's one of the big constraints in designing this. Then let's move on here. This Bob-omb will hit that switch. And what that switch does is it destroys all of the other power-ups that got loaded because of this machine. It destroys whatever power-up made it to the end here, either through this blue block or these blue blocks. And it also destroys all the power-ups that got loaded back in this first Goomba machine. Which means that now the only power-ups loaded in will be these power-ups. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. This is a blue platform which will come and pick up all the power-ups, just because blue platforms on tracks don't despawn. The blue skull platform from the beginning also goes on there, but it doesn't matter. It's just a coincidence. coincidence. That wasn't worth trying to stop because it's harmless. So, we're moving. Yes, so as soon as that switch gets hit, the entity limit, the power-up limit, is now what it was originally. And now you'll see that this Goomba goes on a contraption that looks very much like the one the first one went on, which is because it is. The one exception, which you can't actually see, unfortunately, is that all of these note blocks at the bottom contained wing potaboos. And so the goal here is to destroy a number of power-ups equal to the second digit of the number, the ones digit of the number, which means that what this does is it destroys all of them, but once the block reaches a potaboo, which, as you'll see in the video, it will soon, the block will be destroyed. You can actually hear it, but I'm playing this without sound because I don't want to deal with desktop audio. So it's going to get destroyed down there. So the only ones that have been destroyed are those that are above the last increment of 10. So there are now 2 empty spaces in the power-up limit. Note that in the first one, in the first Goomba machine, we destroy one more than the number we're trying to calculate. In the second one, we destroy exactly the number we're trying to calculate. We'll get into why. The reason why is because if we entered a number like, say, 3, it would destroy all of them. So there's none that can be destroyed by a P block that are guaranteed to be there. It would be possible to set up one in the beginning, but that would require extra entity limit space. So this happens again. Oh, well, let's go one more frame. Yes, so the one other thing that you can notice, wow, I don't know if this is just really low frame rate or what, is that this one has a Goomba instead of a mushroom, and that's because, as we said, the number is exactly equal and not less than or equal to. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is you can also see the pops here because things aren't being loaded in because of the entity limit. And again, the same muncher setups to stop the previous one from progressing. The reason I didn't want to use a Goomba in the first bit is because it's too slow, but here it has to walk about 2 blocks, so it's fine. And then the mushroom will eventually hit this block, which I guess I should probably move to here on the level map as well. The mushroom will eventually hit this block, which it hits. This corresponds to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Also, there's one-ways and stuff to stop things from going between the rows. So here, this is the matrix, and this block really ought to be in the 1 column, but I'll get to that in the detailed portion about why that's there in particular. But so importantly, if these are destroyed, one of these coins being destroyed means that the spike ball that rolls over there will be destroyed because it'll fall in and hit the wall. Again, this is just a little gimmick due to height constraints. It's like I said, I'll cover it in the detailed portion. Then the player continues to move over here, spawns the spike balls, and then goes over here so that the spike balls don't despawn. We'll just play that for you now. Also, you collect a coin up there, which is kind of funny. And you can see right there that the spike balls are rolling along, and that's where it would be destroyed because, again, the lava bubbles sort of go through. So now onto what these spike balls do over at the other side. So they will destroy. There's also brick blocks under these Bowser Juniors. You just can't see it because they're big. They will destroy the brick blocks that are blocking these assorted bosses. And each one corresponds to a different block. So each possible row one can be on, each possible row one can be destroyed on, corresponds to one particular possible block corresponds to one entity under one bomb, corresponds to one segment of the display. Uh, the player, and I'll get into why I use bosses later. Player then is forced through the door, and importantly, from over here, all of these are loaded. These will be loaded moving to the right, again, because they face the player when the room is loaded. And they will hit all of these question blocks that will release flying bombs. And flying bombs released from question blocks will always move to the right. So, okay. And now into how all of this works. So, you can't spawn block a flying bomb. They will spawn whether or not you want them to. And the only way to get them moving left, apart from placing them on the stage, is using a cannon or a pipe. But both of those have to be on screen, and there's simply not enough space. So unless I wanted to do some real awkward movement of the player over here and then back in there, I did this instead. So if the brick block is destroyed, that means that this boss will spawn, which means that the bomb will be attached to the boss and not fly away. So in that way, I'm sort of able to control these. The one consequence of this is that the first time this is loaded, although I could fix that if a P-switch was active, but that sounds like a lot of work. The first time this is loaded, these will all spawn in and destroy these, which is why these all have vines in them. So the ones that were not held down by a boss come and destroy bricks. The bombs fly in from over there and give the result. So, yeah, hopefully that's enough of a general explanation of how it all works. Now I'm going to go into a slightly more detailed explanation of a few individual bits. So, start here. The one thing to notice is that there are no blasters here, just because they wouldn't actually be blocking anything, and because entity space was quite tight, as I'll get to in a moment. I think this is all pretty self-explanatory, or rather well explained. Oh, so this. So, the reason that this setup is so complicated is to get all of these at a height that works. And believe me, it would be less complicated if it could be, because all of these moving platforms take up the entity limit, which again was tight. So this is as condensed as I could make it. And basically the issue is that see, I don't actually need these to go precisely on block lines. If it goes a bit too far to the left, that's actually fine, just because a block will only be destroyed if the block to the left of it is also destroyed. So as long as they all go somewhere between, as long as they all go somewhere where they hit this line effectively, it's fine. Except it's actually not, because if you end up having a fireball that is just that would just barely bounce off of something just on the edge, then it'll instead shift slightly over and go past it, similar to how corner clipping works. But if you have one that does that, it'll actually be big enough to touch ice blocks from a row over. So this is also that those are shot at heights from cannons and such, that just doesn't happen. Which, believe me, was a pain to set up. But yeah, there is a setup that I discovered while planning this level, which is that if you have one like a diagonal like this, and then another diagonal, that a bullet blaster on top of a muncher will shoot a fireball that will go perfectly up a column of frozen coins without touching the coins on either side of it. Which sounds great, but cannons need to be on screen, and there is nowhere near enough space to fit that. What else? Okay. As I said, this goes here, 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 which is just to keep all these flowers loaded. They load for, I believe, until they're 88 blocks away from the player. That could be wrong, but anyways, if they're on a platform, they will be loaded indefinitely. Nothing particularly complicated to explain here. Oh yes, the one thing to explain here, the P blocks, which is that because I'm using munchers to block these in, those will eventually despawn as I go off screen, but the power ups won't. So these P blocks are to ensure that none can get out, which is something that would happen if I don't have them there. Also, uh, you might notice that these blue blocks are a little excessive because this is where those become trapped after the things despawn, and that they will always be in the same place. So I really only need one blue block in each of these rows. Uh, but finding out which one that is would be a massive pain. And this works, and it's not like blocks or something that's very limited in supply. The one other thing to note that just this doesn't have much to do with this here, although one thing is that there are sort of these one ways to hold the blocks in their lane, the mushrooms in their lane. One thing to note is that in Mario Maker 2, one ways, although they contribute to the entity limit while playing the level, they don't contribute to any parts limit except their own of 100, so you can use them a lot more freely. Uh, what else? Nothing particularly interesting here. The reason that this particular encoding scheme was chosen is because, first of all, this needed to correspond to this because the 0 had to come in at the end and it had to be on screen to hit the note block. So the central one had to be the last or close to it. The other important reason this was chosen is that the 7 mushroom doesn't have a roof on it, which means that if 2 of these blocks were next to each other, it would actually skip over one. So this block, this block, this block, and this block needed to sort of be on alternating ones. Outside of that, the scheme is fairly arbitrary. I think specifically what it is it's this one, then 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 this one. I don't know, something like that. As I said, it's pretty much arbitrary, and this sort of encodes what the digits look like. Yeah, I explained that already. Also, this Bob-omb is spawn blocked so that when you go through this door, it doesn't spawn in again. This isn't really something about the level, but when I was uploading this, I pressed right instead and I fell in the pit, which was very sad because this is an auto level and I died. What else? Oh yes, this section. Or more specifically, this section, which is slow. The reason why it has to be so slow is because the player is here. At some point, the platform is going to come and take the player to the right of here. And if you've input a number that begins with 1, then the only lava bubble that will be loaded will be this one. And as soon as you move right, that one's going to despawn. So you need to be there for the time it takes the ice block to get all the way through this sequence of tracks. Or at least to here. It will destroy these when they're unloaded, but if this is not here, then the ice block will not be properly destroyed, and it'll instead destroy more fire flowers than it should. Yeah, this timing isn't super precise, but it's just what I found that works, and if I make it shorter, then it doesn't work, so there you go. Do I have anything interesting to say about this? No, not really. The P blocks they are for the same reason that they were the previous one, although I don't think that they actually strictly need to be there. Oh, yes, this. So as you can see, this block is... If these were 7 parallel rows, there's just one block short of enough room to do there. And this can't really be moved up because the player still needs to go all the way over here. So this one, instead of a lava bubble, has a big lava bubble and destroys this, which means that if the digit 1 is what the 1's digit is, then this block will be destroyed and it'll, I believe, fall into here. Yes, but that's just so that it doesn't hit this note block because it kind of has to go under. That's also what the one way's for because the blocks bounce after landing. Oh yes, another detail. So because there has to be a note block to lift this ball up to this row, if these two were exactly synced, that note block would go down and destroy this. So instead, this delays it slightly, only slightly because of the P-switch timer. It's not active for most of it, but this delays it by a few blocks, and then this speeds it back up. Not speeds it back up, but pushes it forward. The speed of a spike ball and the actual speed it's moving at are not always the same, which is confusing. Uh, yeah, I think that's all there is to explain. Entity limit. So this ended up extremely close to the 100 entity limit, and many times that there have been a lot of entities that were removed in the making of this level. The reason that the Bowser Juniors and Boom Booms are used is because that they do not contribute to the limit of 100 entities. Instead, they have their own limit of 5 and 3, respectively. Uh, Also, the reason that these two in particular were chosen to be Bowser Juniors is so that they'll fall and they won't like shoot fireballs or stun lock the player, because that's annoying. Uh, yeah, I don't think I really have much more to say. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna just play through this one more time, and hopefully this level explained to the extent that if you really wanted to, you could go and build your own. Uh, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could also build something that's like this and good. Uh, Also the video's gone again. I don't like how it does that. Uh, Anyways, yeah, thank you for watching. The one thing I do have to say is that I'm kind of, I don't know. This level got like a few hundred plays, which is nice. I was kind of hoping it'd get a little more. So if you want to go check it out, play with it yourself, enter different numbers. I don't know. Have anything else to say? I must. Oh yeah, like, comment, subscribe, whatever. No, don't really. As you can see, this channel's very empty. I mean, if you really want to see more of my stuff, I have a Twitch channel. I'll link it in the description. I'll also put the code of this level in case you missed it in the first post, and the code of the Mario Maker 1 level. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, and good luck building your own cool stuff.